Another goal for my history course should be to recognize the importance of each individual in God's plan of history. We read 1 Peter 5:7 that said, "He careth for you." God not only cares for each individual, but he has a plan for us. And we need to help our students recognize how important they are to God and to his plan. God made me special like no one else you see. God made me a witness to his diversity. You can find that in your teaching and learning volume. The study of history is, at least in part, a study of key individuals. We're looking at those people who have had an impact in our nation, and we can teach several things about individuals. I just want to reference these right now for you. We want to look at the time and historical setting into which Providence places them, the influences responsible for their character training or development. What helped him or her to become the individual he became? What prepared George Washington to be a leader? What prepared Daniel Boone to be a leader? And every individual, we can look at that. The attributes of their personality, their character, what made them unique, the contribution that that individual makes on the chain of Christianity. All right, and going back to the example of Daniel Boone, we can teach the facts of Daniel Boone's life. I remember a history class about 3rd or 4th grade. I know we studied Daniel Boone, but the only thing I can remember about Daniel Boone is that he carved into a tree, D. Boone killed a bear. That is the only thing I remembered from my elementary study of Daniel Boone. How much more interesting and profitable had I learned how God prepared Daniel Boone through his childhood, through the events of his life, how God prepared him to be a great leader of people. That would have been much more effective and had much longer-term benefit in my life. We could teach the events and facts around the life of Christopher Columbus. But more importantly, we can see how God used Columbus to accomplish a great plan, the discovery of the New World. And she couldn't be left out. That is my daughter. Another goal is to teach the key links that God used to move Christianity westward. In A Guide to American Christian Education, Mrs. Smith developed a course overview for the elementary history curriculum or classroom based on the chain of Christianity moving westward. And we're going to look at that a little more thoroughly in just a few minutes. And in the Mighty Works of God history series, this is one of the books. In the front of every teacher's guide is the same chart identifying those events and individuals that you can teach in the key links that you can teach in the different grade levels. That information was based on Ms. Hall's work in Christian History of the Constitution, and I think you can find it on page 6. Another goal for my history course should be to teach the biblical principles of government which formed the American Christian Constitutional Republic. How many principles did you learn? 7 principles. Can you tell me what some of them were? God's principle of individuality. Another one? Conscience is the most sacred of all property. We could name all 7. We won't. At some point during my history course for the year, I should at least be touching on the ideas of some of those. Maybe all of them every year in a little bit different way, although I don't have a 7 principles section in my course. I'm teaching the ideas of those principles through what I teach. We already referred to this, but one of my course goals is to learn to reason from cause to effect in historic events. The definition of history that you have on your outline had Noah Webster's definition, and he said that history is an account of facts, particularly facts representing nations or states, a narration of events in the order in which they happened, with the causes and effects. And as we teach history, we have to consider who or what is in control. We can help our students, even at a very early age, to see God is in control. And we can see how the character of an individual contributed to the events in his life, or the consequences of an individual's actions. We can teach that. That's reasoning, cause, and effect. As students begin to reason in that way in our history class, they'll start to apply that same reasoning in their own lives. I know if I do this, then this will happen. And we can begin to teach that. We can ask them, how did your actions cause this event to happen? If your actions had been different, how would the outcome have been different? What will be the effect of your or the consequence of your actions? Ask that question. Oh, I'm missing another one, I think. I think I skipped another one. Another goal, to recognize the stewardship responsibility of the American Christian for this nation. Students can learn what a privilege we have in our nation, what a blessing it is to live in America, and our responsibility to protect that. The historian Emma Willard said, "Will not acquaintance with this tale warm the young heart of the future statesman of America to the love of national as of personal virtue? And he will then resolve that when manhood shall have placed him among her guardians, he will watch the purity of her character with jealous tenderness." And they can take responsibility for our nation. So thinking about how do my goals, I had 6 of them, to recognize the providential hand of God, to recognize the importance of each individual, to teach the key links that God used to move Christianity westward, to teach biblical principles of government, to reason from cause to effect, and to recognize the stewardship responsibility for our nation. How do those guide? Those are my goals. That's all fairly philosophical yet. Okay? How do they guide my course? The lessons must support these course goals. They will help me discern which key individuals and events to teach, and what key ideas should I teach for those individuals or events. In the Christian history of the Constitution, Miss Verna Hall identified a whole chart of individuals, events, nations that were used by God to bring forth America and our form of government. In the elementary history program, Mrs. Smith has identified for us, using that as her basis, she has identified 9 major links used by God that we can teach in the elementary classroom. Now, remember, we can never learn all of history. I've had people ask me, but if I only teach those 9 links, what about such and such and such and such? And they get worried. We cannot teach all of history. We only have a certain amount of time in our lives, okay? So we have to select the key individuals, the key events, the key documents that have to do with the development of our nation as an American Christian republic. All right, so each link, we would recommend that you study each link each year, and it's expanded in the following years. This does a couple of things, but one is that it helps the student develop a greater mastery of history rather than teaching bits and pieces, a little bit here, a little bit there.